Parents, what weird or creepy stories do you have about your child's imaginary friend? My wife and I were sitting for our nephew. He kept coming downstairs because there was a monster under his bed. So I marched upstairs, grabbed the monster from under the bed, dragged it downstairs, opened the door and threw it out into the night. Nephew burst into tears and was inconsolable because that was the nice monster and not the nasty monster. So 11 p.m. on a dark Saturday night and I am crawling around a damn wet garden looking for an imaginary monster and trying to apologize so my nephew could go to sleep. Handling imaginary monsters can be tricky. I used to put out some stuffed animal bodyguards in the room whenever we had problems with monsters under the bed. Winnie the Pooh was always my point man. Kept those worthless Care Bears from sleeping on duty. Pooh is highly food motivated, good bear. My daughter started saying Bob before she learned how to say Mama or Dada. She would say it all the time at random times. One time I was in the nursery rocking her to sleep when she said it, and so I asked, "Who is Bob?" She pointed up at the corner of the ceiling behind me. That last sentence, ducking hell. A few years ago, my niece kept telling her mama about her secret mommy who lives in the corner of her bedroom, only comes out at night when no one but her is up, and talks to her. The whole family was terrified until they figured out it was actually an old alarm clock in the room set to a talk radio station that went off at 3 a.m. every night. Why is there an alarm clock that sets off a radio talk at 3 a.m.? Secret mommy turned it on, unsettling dissonant piano arpeggio. Mr. Nobody, he started as the person the kids would blame if one of them forgot to flush the toilet, and then his mythology evolved. For the record, all of this was conceived by 3 of my kids who at the time were 6, 5, and 3. Mr. Nobody has no eyes, no teeth, no tongue and no nose. He does not wear pants and leaves the used toilet paper between his butt cheeks so you can tell where he is by his smell. He does not wear a shirt, but has a pocket cut into his skin where he keeps the key to our house. He can be invisible. He had a beard since he was a baby. He bites off his fingernails and then drips blood where he walks. A friend of mine drew him at the time link. Thankfully, been a few years since Mr. Nobody has been in our house now. Some Reddit, YouTube channel is gonna come by, say this comment in a generic robot font, and not even show the damn picture, and it's going to infuriate me. Those are the worst. Part of how my anxiety manifests is through paranoid delusion, which made for an interesting go of figuring out what the duck I was talking about as a kid. I would pour whole sodas and other drinks down the drain, and claim I was feeding the dragon who lived in the basement. This was imperative, not a fun hobby. That giant ducking lizard in the boiler room was going to engulf the building in hellfire if I did not feed him. I was saving lives. I was about 10 or 11 years old when my parents figured out I was ducked up and that I really believed there was a dragon in the basement of all of our homes. That is really interesting. So when your parents realized that your mind works differently, what did they do? Did you start working with a counselor? How do you feel about your experiences now? Now I feel like I just have a really pervasive imagination. I will be cooking and think about cows, which leads to what kind of music would cows like, which leads to being zoned out for 10 minutes about how cows love Indian classical music. Therapy and self-discipline got me through. Thank you for sharing. My daughter was 4 and had 2 friends when we lived in a rental house. One was named Samantha. Samantha would insist on staying in my daughter's room most of time. Then my daughter would say that Samantha has to go to bed, and we asked where her bed was. She very nonchalantly told us she leaves the house when it gets dark and goes out the back door and sleeps under the grass. We opted not to investigate further. The other was a man that she called monstrous or something close to that. He was very nice, according to her, and had long black hair and wore tan pants and funny shoes with no shirt. She said he was usually covered in blue and white and, according to the kid, would come, walk around the house and the yard, hang around and listen to music if we had some on, and would stand in the front yard until morning. We have since moved out of that house and she has not uttered one thing about either friend visiting or anything. Edit clarified some sentences. Was the house on some kind of Indian burial ground, do you think? I do not believe it was on one, but until late 1800s there was a fairly large community of Native Americans in our area. We definitely thought about monstrous in that regard. but nothing ever seemed malicious or scary, just curious for my daughter's description. At least they sounded quite nice. Not my child, but my nephew, and not an imaginary friend, but the ghost of my dad. Apparently he was under the bed and in the walls. Told him he was sad and wanted to go to the ocean. Spread that man's ashes in the ocean. We did. Sent him to sea. I asked my parents, and apparently I was in therapy for a handful of weeks because I was hearing voices. Around 5 or 6, kids start to develop their internal monologue. It was me. I was hearing my own thoughts. Terrifying. Some people do not even have inner monologues. Sorta odd, do not you think? It's amazing hearing about different experiences people have without knowing there is a difference for huge chunks of their life. Some people cannot make images in their mind. They have descriptive words, but no shape. Some have the opposite, where it is all raw data input with no language filtering it. Makes you wonder about that whole thought experiment. Is your blue the same as my blue? If you saw blue through my brain, would you recognize it as blue, or would it be a different color to you? The physics of electromagnetic radiation can show how we all see the same colors. During childbirth I had complications. I almost died, and my daughter actually did. They revived her and we have been happy and healthy since. Since an infant toddler she always looked around like she was watching something and just giggling at it. Fast forward to the age of 4 and she tells me about her first imaginary friend, Ghosty. All of her imaginary friends are ghosts. To this day she still talks to them at the age of 7. Some of her stories just give me the spooks. Unsure if they are real or not, I am always sure to be kind to my daughter's ghost friends and invite them along with us. I knew a woman once who actually grew up able to see spirits, and still can as an adult. She talked about it at work one day, and the people who took it seriously were creeped out by it. She tried to describe a specific spirit she knew as a kid, and quickly shut her mouth when some of her co-workers noped out. She never even used the word psychic to describe herself because, honestly, I do not think she likes to say it. My point is, it is good that you are someone she can talk about that kind of thing to, because most individuals like her do not have an outlet. Most people dismiss it as fake, and how can you blame them for rejecting the idea of reality itself being something completely different, or worse, think it is somehow evil. Even if she is just imaginative, it is good that you are somebody she knows she can trust with that. I agree with you. It really seems like that woman is not faking, like she certainly does not have the intention to say something which is not true. So then it is good, as you say, to have an outlet of the odd things about you, because if there is some unconventional perception of reality, speaking about it with other people helps. Bear in mind I am being strictly materialist and not spiritual. This isn't creepy, just odd. My 4-year-old son's current imaginary friend is Haris Sohail, a Pakistani cricketer who plays in the National League in Pakistan. He apparently has the same teddies as my son, cycles alongside him, and went on a camping holiday with us last summer. We are Irish living in Ireland. My husband plays cricket a little during summer, but he cannot for the life of him understand where my son learned about Mr. Sohail. This is adorable and hilarious. Have you ever shown your son pictures of the real Haris Sohail after learning about the imaginary friend? Yes, that's the thing. He knows he is from Pakistan and plays cricket. When it started nearly a year ago, I thought it was a made-up person called Haris of Hales being in Ireland and all, but when my husband heard it, he recognized the name. When he showed our son a photo and asked who is that, our son replied, my friend Haris Sohail. He clearly learned of him somewhere, but we can't figure where. We asked him how he knew him. He told us that we had all met up in South Africa. We have never been. Also, family-wise, nobody is into cricket whatsoever. At home the only time cricket has been on our TV is the odd time when Ireland plays. I am sure Haris Sohail is excellent at cricket, but my husband says that he isn't the top or most well-known player in Pakistan, let alone anywhere else. I mean, my husband just about knew the name himself. I think your kid may have been besties with Haris Sohail in a previous life. P. Not really an imaginary friend, but I had an imaginary family of alligators that lived under my bed when I was a kid. Oftentimes I'd get so scared I'd sleep in my brother's room. BC the daddy alligator wouldn't come out to scare me if I was with my brother. I had the same, but they were foxes. I was scared to leave my feet hanging on the side of the bed. I have no idea why. Foxes are really cute. Oh my god, seriously. I spent my childhood terrified to have my feet hanging over the couch, armchairs or bed because of the foxes. Kitchen chairs we okay because the foxes could not hide under them. Scared shitless of the foxes and no one knew why. We sometimes saw foxes in the hedges but they were not scary. I was just scared of them under the bed and mostly at night, but maybe there is something in children's psyche that makes foxes scary. We should look into it. Weirdly, I was not scared of them in other circumstances. I often went hiking with my dad and we saw foxes and I was absolutely not scared of them. Go figure. Out of my 4 kids, only my eldest son, now 20 years old, had an imaginary friend. His name was Barcy and it was a giant wolf, but could transform into a boy. Anyway, my wife and I did not think much about Barcy until we noticed that my son had broken a plastic butter knife and stabbed quite a few of his stuffed animals. He told us that Barcy had told him to do and had even helped. That was when we really got concerned. My son had anger issues as a child, and the reason for that is that, while I call him my son, he is my stepson. His biological father lost custody because of drug-related crimes and just abandoned him. My son has always thought of me as his dad, but was still extremely angry about the situation with his biological. Anyway, we took him in to get some counseling after an incident involving a lighter that he found on the ground outside our apartment. He had tried to burn his baby brother's favorite toy. While in counseling, it came to light that Barcy was planning to eat our family and to pee our blood all over the apartment. This was the beginning of my son's counseling and mild medications. Barcy disappeared over a few months and we were able to take my son off the medication the following year. He remained in counseling for quite a few years, but Barcy was never mentioned again. That sounds really scary and concerning. I am so glad that you were able to get your son the help he needed. Top quality parenting. We were really concerned because his violence towards toys could have escalated towards his brother. I love my eldest with all my heart, but there were times that I felt like I was watching that Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood's movie, The Good Son. I was genuinely scared for my son. I did not want him to become a psychopath or something similar. The good thing is that he is a walking example of the benefits of counseling. Now that was a scary movie. I just want to say thank goodness you got him counseling. Not an imaginary friend, but still creepy. My older sister had a German Shepherd that had passed away named Harley. My daughter was about 5 years old at the time and is in bed with my sister watching TV. She points to the end of the bed and says that Harley. My daughter did not know about the dog and certainly didn't know the name Harley. As it may sound creepy, it is nice to know that someone from the family is watching over you guys and your daughter. This story sounds wholesome and something out of a movie. This is how my family felt about it. I do believe children have a gift before they lose their innocence. Not really an imaginary friend, but something still creepy. I do not know if it counts, but I want to share. We briefly rented a townhouse while waiting to purchase a house. While living in this townhouse, I had always felt creeped out by my bedroom. It had a wall of windows on one side. Even as a grown woman, I felt uncomfortable being in the room after dark and felt like I was being watched by something in the room. I never mentioned it to my daughter. Fast forward to us living in our own house that we bought. My daughter starts having nightmares and is scared to be in her room. One night I asked her about the nightmares. She said it was of a ghost that said that he followed us from the room with all the windows. Rooms like this are very common in a lot of houses. One reason you could feel like this in this room is because of a very high-pitched sounds coming from some sort of machinery just beyond what a normal person can hear. Our brain recognizes that the sound exists but we cannot hear it, leading to the feeling of something being there watching you. The nightmare part is pretty creepy though. The Mythbusters had an episode about that and couldn't find any source on the opposite. I am not a parent, but apparently when I was 3, I had an imaginary friend named Ashikao in my native language, and he told me to go for a walk at 1 a.m. in the morning, try and flood the house, etc. I don't remember any of this, but it is kinda creepy. So you are Japanese? Yep. Oh, nice. I am thinking of moving to Japan for higher studies. youngest daughter one time asked us to keep our bedroom door open because her imaginary friend could not open doors. We laughed it off that she was just afraid and wanted to be able to see us or know we were home if she woke up in the middle of the night. Next day I casually asked what her friend did at night and she said she liked to stand at the end of our bed and watch us sleep. Creep alert 1. We asked how often she speaks with her and she said she really only likes to talk and come out at night. Creep alert 2. We asked can you draw a picture of her. She did. If someone can advise how to attach it I can. Buzz super creepy drawing. And we asked what was up with her smile and she said she had really sharp teeth and a lump on her head. Anyways, we eventually got a dog and she told us her friend did not like the dog because he stared at her at night. Long story short, we eventually moved. Her friend did not come with us but daughter said she had probably find us. That was 8 years ago. Have not heard about her since we moved. We moved one more time since. I am hoping she is lost. Edit pic added. Pic link. Damn, that was creepy but I kinda wanna see the picture. I am not sure how added. Laughing lol. She drew that. I thought it was gonna be really creepy lol. My imaginary childhood friend somehow had the same, rare, previously unheard by me name of my dead convict ancestor who was transported for his involvement in the revenge killing of all the males in an enemy family. Hatfields or McCoys. It was in Ireland. Not my story and other users. Purple Mommy. Link. The Purple Mommy story. Purple Mommy. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something called Purple Mommy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little bit creepy. Here is a few of the Purple Mommy details. Purple Mommy is all purple with long hair and bright all white eyes. At the time he mixed up purple with black, so he could have meant she was all black. Purple Mommy picks him up at night, and turns off the lights. We would often find my son out of his crib in the morning, which would mean him crawling over the railing into the ground, at a time when he was barely walking. Definitely found the lights in his room off a few times too. Even though he's terrified of the dark, Purple Mommy needs a bandage because she has blood everywhere. Purple Mommy has no smile, meaning a mouth. Purple Mommy can take her head off. Purple Mommy really does not like Daddy. He told us all of this stuff for maybe a year or a little more. If we ever asked where she was, to always point to the same spot, a corner of the room behind his open closet door. He would also wake up crying almost every night during this time. Once, during a really rough night, my wife went to ask him what's wrong, and his answer was Purple Mommy won't let me sleep. Oh, I remember Purple Mommy. My older daughter started having nightmares suddenly that lasted for a few weeks. Every night she had be inconsolable about how there were parents in her room watching her at night. Each night, more parents. They were tall, they were thin, they were dark and creepy and wore tattered clothes. We had no idea what the hell but were like, well, I guess we need a priest. Then we saw some scarecrows at a harvest fair. Looked at parents. No idea where she got parents from scarecrows. Are you concerned about why she sees scarecrows in her room at night? My cousin's imaginary friend told her to burn things. Yeah, she really didn't turn out very well as an adult if you're wondering. Yikes. My stepbrother had an imaginary friend named Willa Rose. One night, my mom found the dog dead outside. My stepbrother admitted to killing the dog because Willa Rose told him to do it. The next day he disappeared. Mom told me he went to go live with grandma for a while. I am 21 now and I haven't seen him since. Edit. My stepbrother told me what Willa Rose looked like before he got sent away. Apparently, she was a 14-year-old girl who died in 1904. She has no eyes but wears glasses, paper white skin, and wears a ruffled pink dress with olive green stockings. Apparently she came from the sky. My stepbrother believed that once a person dies, they enter the sky. They can come back as ghosts and become people's imaginary friends. Pretty creepy, but that was my 2 cents. I need more details. What happened to him? I don't know, however, I have been looking into it. He might be in a mental asylum but I am not 100%. So sad. I spent some time working in an asylum during school. Can be a sad place. Paw. It was actually me. I had an imaginary friend named Paw and I guess he started out cool but then started scaring me. I guess my parents were so convinced it was a ghost or something they had an exorcism performed on the house. I guess afterwards I him a few more times, but he was outside looking in through my upper level window. Later I saw a drawing my brother did of a stormtrooper and said it looked like Paw. My mom is fully convinced it was another little boy who died and wanted to take over my body. Sometimes I wonder if I am Paw. So he could not enter the house after exorcism. No. I am telling the story on behalf of my mother. When I was 4 till 8 I had an imaginary friend, Olivia, who was like me. I remember her clearly. Olivia was nice to me up until my mum left the room. Then she had BTCH and I was friends with her only because I didn't have legit friends. One day, told Olivia I didn't want to be friends anymore and she threatened me that she would cause trouble in the nights. So, when the night came, me and my mum started hearing some weird ass noises coming from the living room. When mum wondered to herself WTF happened, I told her, "Mummy, Olivia is bad. She is mean to me and threatened me that if I stopped being friends with her, she would never let us sleep peacefully again." Mum looked like she was having a stroke after I said that. Fun times. Wow. So how did you get rid of Olivia? Or, did you? Cue spooky music. Oh dear lord. Okay, now I am creeped out. I already have a shitty life. The last thing I wish RN to happen is that BTCH to come back. To be honest, I am not sure how I got rid of her. I just stopped talking about her and sort of forgot her. I remembered her thanks to this post. Did she grow up with you over time, or was she always grown up but you started to look like her as you grow up? While I am not a parent, I do have a story about my younger brother's imaginary friends. In order for any of this to make sense, I need to explain that my sibling would frequently draw inspiration from things that I had said or done, but not quite hit the mark with his own attempts. For example, after I had purchased a poster to hang above my bed, he took it upon himself to stick an inch-wide clothing patch, the sort that you might sew to a jacket, above his. This kind of thing was pretty common, and it extended into make-believe scenarios. Anyway, one day when I was in elementary school, I wrote a fairly uninspired story about Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Princess Toadstool making their way to my neighborhood from the Mushroom Kingdom. This was back before Toadstool had retaken her original name of Peach. The plot saw the characters ejecting themselves from a television, then having to contend with real-world physics and such. My class had loved the tale, so that night, I recited it to my brother, pretending as though I was describing events which had taken place that very day. The boy was utterly spellbound, and furthermore, he immediately started playing along. We traded whispered details for hours, until long after we were supposed to have been asleep. Unfortunately, my brother's enthusiasm remained until the next morning, when he took it upon himself to recount our adventures to our mother. The people from Mario came out of the television. He excitedly told her I had to tell them how to use knives because their fireballs did not work. Somewhat absent-mindedly, our mother replied with, "It sounds like a fun dream." No, it was not a dream. My brother angrily insisted. I was awake, I could not sleep, because they got in bed with me. That is why I had to get knives from the kitchen. That got our mother's attention. An interrogation quickly followed, during which it was eventually established that none of the household's cooking implements had actually been stolen during the night. The question of why mustache-sporting men, even imaginary ones, had been allowed to climb beneath my brother's covers was also raised, then followed by a somewhat graphic lecture about never letting strangers into the house, let alone one's bedroom. Suffice it to say that I was never able to look at Mario in quite the same light. Too long didn't read. My brother described an orgy with the Mario brothers. It turned into a knife fight. What the hell? You gotta admit that to Doctor is hilarious. So, my 8-year-old son's imaginary friend convinced him that the explosion of our sun and the Big Bang are the same event, and that time is not linear but circular, and that is why we have deja vu. Thanks, Ian. The concept behind that line of thought seems way too advanced for an 8-year-old to come up with in a bubble. Frightening and fascinating. I think Ian is actually just his inner monologue, but he doesn't get it yet, that the voice is him. But then he will talk about stuff like this, and this was a mind-blowing conversation. He talked about parallel universes, that they are just layering of the circular timelines, that every timeline has a finite amount of time but endless possibilities within them. I was awake a long time that night just thinking, so is he consuming any media with alternate reality and time travel themes that would give him these ideas? It just sounds like he's too young to be having such complex thoughts about a subject that educated adults haven't yet fully grasped either.